It's weird how one great show can suddenly make me so optimistic. I really hope I didn't just set myself up for a disappointment there.
Look at that, Mike.
I think we now know what Velvet's Touch is all about, right?
Oh, I love Velvet's Touch. What, are you kidding me? There's nothing like Velvet's Touch. A little shark cage per se, or knockouts cage, or Velvet's cage.
That's Velvet's Touch.
Oh, yeah. Well, why don't Velvet get in there with her, and I can leave here and I'll go down, hang out there in the cage with them. It'd be great.
We're not going anywhere.
Oh, my God. I think that's high enough, man. Madison's afraid of heights.
Send her to the ceiling.
She's afraid of heights. I know this. I know this.
Tossing the brass knucks from the cage, interrupted by the referee and intercepted, who turns him over. Oh, another, how many, that's a brass knucks. Oh, knockout, shot with the, and the referee Stifler pointing down to Gail Kim and says, he pointed at Gail and said, winner.
Winner by disqualification.
What the hell? Again, the desperation mode of Bobby Roode kicking the referee. He's trying to get disqualified out here. There's that twist of fate.
Oh, he did. That was blatant can be. That low blow, that kick right to the referee by the world champion.
Absolute desperation on the part of Bobby Roode.
Okay. Lesson learned. So once again, we predictably start off with the X Division in the curtain jerker spot, which TNA may be regretting now since this was probably the most enjoyable match of the night. I don't know how or when, but at some point, this became an elimination match. Huh. Didn't hurt so much that time. Anyway, I don't know why the gimmick was added. I don't think they ever announced it, or if they did, then I missed it. Luckily, this was one of those rare occasions in this company where the gimmick actually made the match better because it allowed them to tell more of a story. This was pretty damn good. A really fun opener that delivered all the action you'd expect from the X Division, Tower of Doom, Brainbuster from the Turnbuckle. Kid Cash was kind of a non-entity here, but I don't think anyone really expected the match to be about him anyway. Sorensen was getting over really well, not surprising since he was the only face in the match, but the star of this thing was Zema Ion. You can tell they like this guy because his personality is just jumping off the screen right now. He's a cocky show-off who wants all the attention, all the spotlight, to the point where that starts to work against him at times. And even after he's eliminated, he sticks around, he distracts the referee during both pin attempts, and then he trips up Sorensen. So it's like even though he lost, he still wants to be the one who determines who walks away with the belt. And now he can say that Aries only kept the title because of him. So he's flawed, but also crafty. That's a really good character. Aries retains, which I'm happy about, but Ion got put on the map here, so I would expect his push to continue, and that sounds good to me. Pope versus Devon. Honestly, I didn't care about this one. I really wasn't paying that close attention to it. The match was meh, and the finish really didn't feel like they'd earned it at all. Apparently Devon's kids were fine with nailing their dad in the back with chair shots a few weeks ago, but now suddenly they have a problem with kicking him when he's down? That sure came out of nowhere. This might have frustrated me, but I stopped trying to make sense of this feud months ago. I guess when they turned face at the end, it was supposed to be this feel-good moment, but the only thing that made me feel good was that this stupid feud finally looks like it's over. Gunner versus Bob Van Dam. This match was way too short. Yes, it had very little build-up, but if you're doing an injury angle like this with a former world champion, that's something you need to take your time with and build up to. You can't just do it after 5 or 6 minutes. Now, I was absolutely astounded that Van Dam actually did the job here, and I was thrilled to see it. And it wasn't a bad match for the time it had, but considering this was by far Gunner's biggest win to date, unless you count the time last summer when he was pinning world champions, which I don't because it was never followed up on and amounted to nothing, the fact that the match was so short made the whole thing feel kind of half-assed and underwhelming. I mean, this felt like more of an angle than a match, when ideally it really should have been both. Kudos to them for finally making Van Dam job to somebody, and an up-and-coming young guy no less. Unfortunately, the execution made this seem not as effective as it should have been. I mean, the fact that Gunner did that to BVD should feel like a bigger deal than this. And that's a damn shame, because they did have the right idea here, but they just didn't milk it enough. Gail Kim versus Mickie James for the Knockouts title. Oh, God. I was so frustrated by this one that I just couldn't wait to vent about it. So I recorded some brief thoughts while I was watching the show last night. So for my immediate reactions to this match, here's Fool Killer from 24 hours ago. Alright, I'm still in the middle of watching Genesis here, but I gotta turn on the camera and say something. This is absolutely ludicrous. Velvet Sky shows up, and she has this brilliant idea, I use that word loosely, to stop Madison Rayne from interfering in the Knockouts match. Somehow, she gets Sting to sign off on this, and her brilliant strategy is not to, have Madison banned from ringside under penalty of being fired or, something intelligent. It's to lock Madison in a cage and suspend her above the ring. As if that isn't going to be the most distracting fucking thing in the world. And immediately I start thinking, well, how the hell is that supposed to stop Madison from passing Gail a weapon of some kind? And the answer is that it's not supposed to do that. Blah, blah, blah. Overbooking, blah, blah, blah. Gail wins by DQ. Are you kidding me? This is exactly why there should not be a Knockouts VP, because even the mere mention of a Knockouts VP causes stuff like this to happen. Haven't we had enough of this by now? Velvet wants to be the Knockouts VP, God help us. So we're just going to be getting more of this.
2 months ago...
Enough is fucking enough. No more Knockouts VP. God damn it. Thanks, Fool Killer from 24 hours ago. Despite the fact that the cage was distracting as hell, and I had to endure Madison Rayne fucking screeching and screeching through that whole damn thing, they were actually having a good match until the bullshit overbooking started. Everything after that, up to and including the stupid finish, can kiss my ass.
This whole show is ridiculous!
Why did Mickie use the brass knuckles? Did you forget that Mickie is a babyface? Why didn't she just throw them away? You hadn't even pissed her off enough to the point where I might buy that she was blinded by anger and not thinking clearly or something like that. And didn't they do pretty much the exact same match with the exact same finish with Robbie E. and Jay Lethal at Final Resolution a year ago? What on earth about that was so fascinating that you just had to do it a second time?
I don't know what my future holds, but I know one thing.
The Velvet Touch? Are you kidding me? Velvet Touch my ass! Apparently the TNA writers have never figured out that when the live audience is chanting bullshit, it means that what you're doing is stupid. God, even though there isn't a Knockouts VP right now, all it takes is for someone to mention it, and then this garbage starts. You suspend this ear-splitting harpy 10 feet above the ring in a fucking cage with bars painted pink. Did you really think anyone under the sun was going to be able to take that shit seriously?
Oh, what a bunch of bull...
Abyss versus Bully Ray. Monsters Ball. Huh. That one hurt even less. For pure entertainment value, this was probably the match of the night, just because of Bully Ray and his reactions to things. And the match itself was just what a Monsters Ball should be. Black hole slam on barbed wire, backsplash onto barbed wire, choke slam on thumbtacks. Bully Ray usually delivers in these types of matches, and you put Abyss in a Monsters Ball, and you know he's going to do some pretty sick stuff to his body. He always does. So this one was a lot of fun. The only thing I didn't like was Janice. Chairs, tables, barbed wire, thumbtacks, okay. But when you bring Janice into this, it gets stupid. It's like when Randy Orton tried to murder John Cena with pyro on the stage in their Iron Man match. You can't use it without killing someone. So the fact that they even try to use it makes this comically over the top. So I really wish they would just forget about Janice altogether, but at least they didn't actually use it on someone and have it be fine afterward like at Bound for Glory a year ago. Matt Morgan and Crimson versus Samoa Joe and Magnus for the tag team titles. Pretty solid tag match. Clean finish, a big step up from anything involving Mexican America last year, so I'm not complaining. You know, the dueling chants of "we want Morgan, no we don't" were kind of funny. Part of me was really hoping for Joe and Magnus to win this one, although I kind of expected the faces to retain, and given the current state of the tag division, they probably should have. I guess the part that surprised me here was that the match ended, and that was it. You see, I was expecting some kind of DQ finish or a beatdown afterward or something. You know, some kind of cliffhanger for this to go out on. But there wasn't anything like that. And since this is really the only tag team feud they've got to work with at the moment, I thought they'd want to do something to stretch that out. And maybe they'll do it on iMPACT, I don't know, the spoilers haven't come out yet. So the match was perfectly fine, it's just that I was expecting them to do more to start a feud here, and maybe that's not what they were going for. James Storm versus Kurt Angle. This was a really good match with some great storytelling and great ring psychology, with Angle trying to avoid the super kick, but then finishing Storm with the super kick. Albeit not a very good super kick, but that's not really the point. That aspect was very strong. A lot of it was on the slow side, though. You know, they didn't completely get out of second gear, and the crowd didn't help them either because they were starting to cool down a little at that point. Not a bad match by any means. I just don't think it was the best one they've had. Maybe if it had been booked a little differently, or if Angle had nailed that super kick better, or maybe if the crowd had been hotter, it might have felt more exciting. I'm not really sure why, but I just wasn't totally in love with this one. I think a more exciting finishing sequence probably would have improved this a lot. Which brings us to Bobby Roode versus Jeff Hardy for the world title. Now apparently the reason why some of the previous matches were on the short side is because these final two matches were getting like 20 plus minutes each. That wasn't a bad way to go at all. But if you're going to do that, you better make damn sure those matches deliver in a big way. Now Angle and Storm was good, but a bit underwhelming. Roode Hardy was the more exciting match. It was a terrific match. Good near falls, kicking out of each other's finishers. You know, Roode mocking Hardy on the turnbuckle was really funny. Not shockingly, my only issue is the same one a lot of people had. Now before the match, Roode cut a promo where he says he'll do whatever it takes to keep the title. And if you didn't see the cheap finish coming at that point, then you haven't been watching TNA very long. In my opinion, the best time to end this match would have been when Roode made the pin with his feet on the ropes. It's still heel tactics, Hardy doesn't get hurt, but they just had to protect Jeff Hardy so much, and unfortunately Roode got damaged in the process. Now I understand that the TV show is a higher priority to the company, but is it really that difficult to end pay-per-views in a more satisfying way than this? Your Roode just kicks the referee and that's it? I'm sorry, but that's pretty lame.
This whole show violates everything about my journalistic integrity.
This left me with some really nagging questions. Number one, if Roode was happy to get himself DQ'd, why didn't he just kick the referee in the balls right after the bell rang? Number two, why did the referee just DQ Roode and have that be the end of it? I've never understood why this happens, and it doesn't just apply to this match. Yes, attacking the referee is illegal, but when the guy is obviously doing it to get himself intentionally DQ'd, why are you giving him exactly what he wants? Number three, just like last month, where the hell was Sting? You know, earlier in the show, Sting says that he's given Jeff Hardy his full endorsement, that he's throwing all his support behind Jeff Hardy, but then Hardy gets screwed over, the crowd is chanting, "We want Sting! We want Sting!" All he has to do is come out and restart the match, but he's nowhere to be seen. So Sting was available to sign off on the Velvet Touch, but somehow this was beneath his notice?
What the fuck?
And it was made even more aggravating by the fact that it was the second pay-per-view in a row that ended like this. The audience is asking where the hell Sting is because there's some bad shit going down and he needs to come out and fix it, but he never shows up. I didn't like that the first time, and now you've done it twice in 2 months.
I was a war correspondent, and now I'm covering this.
Can't they at least come up with an explanation for why Sting hasn't been coming out to deal with this stuff? It's just really, really irritating when they have all this build-up, ask people to shell out $35, and have an over 20-minute match just so they can end on what was essentially a commercial for Impact. That does not earn you any points with me.
You can take this microphone and shove it up your ass.
And I have to say, the way Bobby Roode is getting booked at these pay-per-views is starting to leave a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, yeah, it makes sense because he's the guy who will do whatever it takes to keep the title, but him going for DQs and countouts and time limit draws instead of actually beating people makes him look a hell of a lot weaker than he should. Not to mention that continuous finishes like this tend to piss people off. Now compare him to someone like Austin Aries. He's got a similar gimmick, Mr. Win at All Cost, but Aries uses heel tactics while still getting conclusive pinfalls in ways that leave me feeling satisfied with the outcome. The end result being that Aries looks like a more effective champion than Roode does. I mean, yeah, Roode still has the title, but why can't he just freaking beat a guy? Why does he have to try to walk out on the match when Bully Ray just did the same exact thing 2 hours before? Genesis did have some good matches. The X Division match, the Monsters Ball, the tag title match, and Storm Angle was good, but it felt like it was lacking something. And Rude Hardy, while a very strong match, was marred by the typical finish that serves as yet another reminder that TNA's pay-per-views are treated as a distant second to the TV show.
I'm done! I am done with you! I'm done with this entire show!
I really should know better than to expect anything else by now. So I guess even TNA's Big Four pay-per-views aren't immune to this stuff. You know, I'd ask if anyone was still wondering why TNA's pay-per-view buy rates are so low, but I don't think it's a big secret. It's because they do stuff like this and everyone knows it. You ask people to pay $35 to see Angle, Storm, and Rude Hardy on pay-per-view, and then you give away those matches for free 4 days later? And this has gone on for so long now that most fans know they really don't have to buy the pay-per-views anymore because TNA is going to give away most of the important stuff for free. And I'm trying to accept the fact that this is just the way the company operates, but it's really difficult when you think about how much better pay-per-view business they could be doing if they just book the show a little more traditionally, with the TV building up to the pay-per-view. But that's not what they want to do. They're focused on TV ratings. I don't see why they can't have both, but whatever. All I can do is try to deal with these things as they are. Anyway, Impact was kind of weird this week. There was a lot of talking and not much wrestling in the first hour, and a lot of wrestling and not much talking in the second hour. And it wasn't the first time they've done this, but I really wish they would avoid it. Because for me, these shows are more enjoyable when they're not so lopsided. I think if they moved some of the talking segments to the second half and done Storm Angle at like 9:50 to lead into hour 2, it might have come off better, but that's just speculation. There was a lot of good stuff here this week. The double main event, a couple other things. Bully Ray making fun of WWE's Twitter obsession was really funny. You know, there were some problems, though. One of the things this show dropped the ball on was following up on the Genesis undercard matches. There was no follow-up with Aries, Zion, and Sorensen, no follow-up with Gale and Mickey, and the biggest brain fart here, no follow-up on Gunner destroying Bob Van Dam. Really? That was the biggest thing Gunner's done in this company, and you don't even mention it? You don't want to play it up? It doesn't get a video package or anything? TNA, why do you think Gunner never got any kind of rub from pinning a couple world champions last summer? Because, just like here, there was no follow-up. The guy did something really impressive and you just seem to forget it ever happened.
You people are fools!
Look, the whole reason why the Motor City Beer Money Best of 5 series was so memorable, aside from those matches being fan-fucking-tastic, was because the company promoted it like it was something really special. There were promos about it, video packages. They still talk about it on the show to this day. That's what this needed if you really wanted to put Gunner over as a killer. But instead, they decide to revisit the Garrett Bischoff thing, which was the whole reason why Gunner had to be built back up as a monster in the first place, because you made him look like a chump by jobbing him out to a referee. That and the knockout stuff were my main source of frustration in the first hour. Following an overlong video package that, I swear, felt like it was never going to end, Bischoff comes out, and this guy is just in love with the sound of his own voice, so he starts talking, and talking, and talking, and talking, and eventually Garrett comes out. And as we've seen before, Garrett Bischoff with a microphone is usually not a good thing. He was passable here. He didn't have a ton of personality or anything, but he got his lines out decently. But the mention of his trainer at the end there gave me a really queasy feeling. Anyone but Hogan, anyone but Hogan, anyone but Hogan. I'm really trying to see an upside here, but I don't get the Garrett Bischoff thing at all. And I guess he's got some proponents, but I just don't see what's so special about him. I don't see it. I mean, I don't think he's completely devoid of talent, but I don't understand why they're putting this much focus on him when he should probably be an OVW right now. A lot of people are going to cry nepotism and point at the Bischoff connection as the reason for this, and I'm sure they both deny it, but honestly, the writers have never even tried to make this look like he's not getting this push because of who his dad is. That's the problem I have. And it bothers me to see them doing this with Garrett Bischoff of all people, when guys that are easily much more ready for a spot like this than he is are sitting on the bench. Then we had the Knockouts match. Ha-ha! Oh, Jesus Christ. Remember that WrestleMania match? That big women's battle royal where the entire Divas division was used to put over Santino's cross-dressing gimmick? That's what this reminded me of. We're getting into Santina territory here, where all these women are just being used as a joke for Eric Young. They did Winter versus ODB, and I honestly couldn't tell you if the match was good or bad. I couldn't even pay attention to it because Eric was just so damn distracting. I mean, Eric and ODB together is going to do nothing but irritate me. ODB's shtick is very, 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 very old. And I haven't found Eric Young the least bit entertaining since the Super Eric thing. I mean, when he came out in that asinine superhero costume, I was like, for fuck's sake, enough is enough with this clown. I mean, he was funny back in the Team Canada days. He was legitimately funny because he wasn't so over the top. But he's just gotten goofier and goofier over the years, and you put him with ODB and it's only going to get worse. It was nice to see some of the other knockouts for a change. They haven't done anything with Winter and Angelina in a while. It's just too bad that the writers didn't have anything better for them than this. But the silver lining here is I'm thinking this might be used to start a breakup angle with them. I mean, they kind of teased that in their promo before the match, and I sure hope that's where this is headed, because they can't get those two away from each other fast enough. This time-traveling lesbian vampire thing has ruined them. Winter has gone absolutely nowhere, and Angelina has never been more irrelevant than she is now, and this stupid gimmick is the cause of all of it. So with any luck, that'll happen. And there's one other thing that I really need to bring up here. This has nothing to do with the show, but I'm starting to think that Angelina might be bulimic. Seriously. I mean, if you think I'm imagining things, take a closer look. She's always been really skinny, but not like this. I mean, she's starting to remind me of starving third world children now. I mean, there's no meat on her anymore. She's just skin and bones. Her skeleton looks like it's eating her, for God's sake. I'm not even joking about this. It's like she ran out of fat to burn off and now she's dropping muscle mass. I don't know if this is all in my head or what, but she looks unhealthy. She really does. I mean, she needs to eat a pizza or a cheeseburger or some chili fries or something, because if she loses much more weight, her body is going to collapse in on itself. Now, once you get past that stuff, which unfortunately took up a good chunk of the first hour, the rest of the show was pretty good. The opening segment addressed what happened at the pay-per-view and set up the main event pretty well. I'm not sure what they were going for with that Sting Bobby Roode exchange. You know, me boss, you employee. No, me world champion. I wasn't really crazy about that part, but it did everything it needed to do, and it only took a little under 9 minutes. They had a tag team match with Morgan and Crimson versus Robbie E. and Rob Terry.
Nobody cares about you guys.
And after watching this match, I have a really important question. Why the hell is Robbie still the television champion? Besides the obvious reasons, I mean. Why does he still have the belt? They're back to booking him as a 2-minute jobber now. Obviously, they have nothing for him, so why is he walking around with what should be the second-tier championship in the company? The only thing that makes any sense to me is that they're having him tread water until Eric Young gets another title shot. But if that feud does what I'm afraid it will, and becomes Robbie and Rob Terry versus Eric Young and ODB, then I just...
Oh my God, he's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke!
No, I'm not even going to go there. Thankfully, this match was basically a squash. Morgan and Crimson just demolished these idiots, as they should. Then Joe and Magnus hit the ring and kicked the faces' asses. Now that's what I'm talking about. Now we got a feud here. This is what I was looking for at the pay-per-view. This being the only real tag team rivalry you've got to work with right now, I figured you'd want to keep it as hot as possible, so this was needed. And it was a good beatdown, too. Joe and Magnus are great together. You're probably getting tired of hearing me say that, but it's true. Robbie and Rob Terry can go fuck themselves. But since there aren't many options right now, I guess they'd make an acceptable jobber team to put people over like they did here. I still don't like it, but using them like this is a lot more tolerable to me than either of them getting singles pushes. And the two talented teams are going to need somebody to job for them, so let's just call this the lesser of two evils. They had an in-ring segment where AJ called out Kazarian and wanted an explanation for why he abandoned him in the match last week. Kaz didn't want to say anything, but Daniels came out and explained that AJ was like a sinking ship and Kaz wanted to hitch his wagon to a star on the rise or something like that. And this really didn't make much sense. First of all, Daniels hasn't been doing that well lately. He's been losing a lot more matches than he's been winning, so Kaz joining up with him doesn't track at all, especially since him and AJ were doing really well. They were in the finals of the tag team tournament, and they might have won if Daniels hadn't shown up when he did, so I figured there's gotta be something about this Daniels-Kaz thing that we don't know yet. The idea of Daniels versus AJ again really doesn't interest me anymore, and we've just seen it so many times now, but Kaz being in there does add a new wrinkle, so if this does become something, I'm hoping it'll mostly be AJ versus Kaz with Daniels being the puppet master pulling Kaz's strings. That's a much fresher way to go about this. And if it evolved into a triple threat feud, that'd be alright. But the trick is going to be avoiding AJ and Daniels one-on-one, because there is nothing new about that at this point. Now, astonishingly, the last two matches actually took up most of the second hour, which was pretty great when you think back to all the 2-minute main events we had to put up with when Russo was the head writer. Angle Storm was set up earlier with an in-ring segment. James Storm cuts another outstanding promo. I didn't like how they gave Kurt Angle a bit of an out by not giving him time to prepare, and him running to the ring while still getting his gear on was kind of unintentionally funny. That could have been tweaked a little bit, but the match was better than their pay-per-view match. I mean, this is the match they should have had at Genesis. Much more exciting finishing sequence in this one. Good storytelling with Angle using the super kick, but Storm kicking out of it this time. Storm's the new #1 contender. That's awesome. And of these two matches, this was the one that I was okay with them doing on Impact because it was the blow-off, and they wanted to move Storm back into the title picture now. Plus, it kind of felt like they'd done everything on pay-per-view that they were going to do to each other, so this one I agreed with. Now, Rude Hardy, on the other hand, just felt like they were pissing away pay-per-view buys, but I've already been through that. Anyway, these guys also had a match that was better than the one they had at Genesis. Weird coincidence, huh? Another really strong match from these two, and the finish was very well shot, I thought, with Bully Ray never actually being seen, never even being in the frame until after he pulled the referee out. That was perfectly executed because it came as a total shock. And the tension had been built up just enough at that point so that it came as a very dramatic finish. But again, I think they're protecting Hardy too much. Bobby Roode is really starting to look weak here. I mean, if you want him to retain any kind of heel heat, then you're going to have to let him get a pin on this guy at some point. And this is obviously building up to a triple threat in which I can only hope that Hardy eats the pin so Roode can keep the title without pinning Storm, which I'm not terribly optimistic about. But honestly, that's what needs to happen. Roode versus Storm is the match I want to see, and I think a lot of people want to see. That's where all the real personal issues are, and you're going to ruin it by throwing Hardy in there. I get the whole Hardy's Road to Redemption thing, but you've already messed that up by putting him in the title picture way too early. It doesn't feel like he had to earn his way back there. He embarrassed Jeff Jarrett like 5 times in a row, and just like that, he's a title contender again. It's too soon. You didn't give him any kind of mountain to climb. It's all been too quick and too easy. I mean, yeah, I hate the fact that Immortal are still around, but Jeff Hardy's the one who should be feuding with them, not Abyss. I mean, he's got more reason to hate Immortal than anybody. He should be fighting guys like Bully Ray and Gunner until Immortal is finally gone for good, not going for the world title. It just seems to make more sense that way. I mean, he's not going to get closure on the Victory Road incident until after Immortal is gone, so why are you skipping over that part? At any rate, they want to roll with Jeff Hardy as a title contender again. I don't agree with it, but love him or hate him, he does make the company a lot of money, so I'm obviously not going to win this argument. But I'll tell you this right now, TNA. If James Storm is not the one who ultimately takes the title from Bobby Roode, if it ends up being Jeff Hardy instead, I am going to lose it. So that better not happen. Look, this was a good show despite the problems in the first hour. The second hour was very exciting, and there was enough good stuff in the first hour that it wasn't a complete waste of time. Unfortunately, the viewership took a big hit when Jersey Shore came on at 10, which sucks because, like I said, that second hour was really good, despite the frustrating way the main event ended. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover. This video is actually getting really long, so I gotta start editing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Over. Out.